I'm the man, I got the plan. When it hits the fan, do all I can, do all I can.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spoiler Warning Podcast. This is review number 772 with a review of Deadpool and Wolverine. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And if you're joining us for the first time, the Spoiler Warning Podcast is a weekly film review program. Each week in the show, we're going to dive into a bit, discuss, and argue over the latest films coming to a theater near you. This week, we are back in theaters for another action-packed Deadpool film. This time, Deadpool's teaming up with the Wolverine, a little hero that is known to a lot of people, crowd favorite. Mm-hmm. What have you thought about the marketing for this film?
I honestly have mostly avoided marketing for this film once I knew that it existed. I mean, there's long-stand marketing before this was even announced, for years of a supposed bromance / rivalry between Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman, right? So
yeah.
Everyone knew this has been drummed up for a while, and then when it was announced, the world got very excited. And I feel like I honestly never watched a trailer for this movie. I don't know if that's possible, but I don't think I knew any of the beats that were going to be in this movie at all going into it.
Yeah, the only trailer, I had seen the teaser because when it hit the internet, people were passing it around and I watched it then. Sure. But what I have only been seeing in theaters are these adjacent marketing materials, Deadpool and Wolverine telling you to shut your phone off before the film, and all these other things that are the actors and or the characters talking about the movie, but I haven't seen a real legitimate trailer in theaters, I think, ever, maybe, which seems wild.
Yeah,
because
I feel the same. I feel like I haven't seen anything at all, getting people excited about this movie, except for just buzz that this is happening and presumably it's the biggest movie of the summer.
Yeah. And when I was downloading trailers getting ready for this episode, I was watching through a bunch of the trailers that I hadn't seen, and I was like, these trailers show a lot, but I kind of like these trailers. So, it's interesting that they weren't shoved in front of me. I'm
excited to hear one when we do this episode, because it'll be my first one to my knowledge.
Nice. So trailers and marketing aside, Stephen, were you excited to get yourself out to the theater to see this film?
Man, excited is a strong word. I felt mixed. I think I enjoyed the first Deadpool well enough. We probably even reviewed the second Deadpool, and I probably was favorable about it, in some capacity.
So I was searching the site, thespoilerwarning.com, trying to find what we rated the previous two films, and I don't think we did a review of Deadpool 2 somehow.
Okay. Well, that justifies my belief that I was heavily intoxicated when I watched Deadpool 2, which is the only thing that I feel... that is my main memory of that movie. But when the first Deadpool came out, it was kind of refreshing because the MCU had been so kind of squeaky clean and boring. It was doing that goofy reference thing that felt kind of boring, and it was fun to see someone come in and just kind of take a sledgehammer to it and give a very R-rated treatment. I feel like the novelty wore off for me by Deadpool 2, and at some point in the intervening years, by the time this came out, the idea of another Deadpool movie didn't really excite me that much anymore. I think I hit Ryan Reynolds saturation at some point over the last many years of movies that were kind of hit or miss with his kind of signature smarmy style, I was interested in the idea of this finally being the bridge that brings the X-Men into the MCU, because to me, that is another franchise that I'm very familiar with, and most other random comic beings that they would bring in, including the Fantastic Four, are people that I just don't have a relationship with at all, Yeah. So the idea of the X-Men joining the universe was one of the first exciting things I'd heard in quite a while. So I was interested in seeing what this movie did. We'll probably get into it more in spoilers, I guess, but suffice to say, this is not quite the bridge movie that I thought it was going to be. But the idea of it being a bridge between phases and stuff was something that I was interested in. But the idea of sitting through a packed screening of a Deadpool movie also felt kind of annoying to me. the cultural cachet that Deadpool has become, it's almost like Family Guy. It's like, I think Family Guy had a lot of funny moments. If someone tells me they are a big Family Guy fan, I immediately want to distance myself from that, because it usually means there's going to be a certain lowbrow sense of humor or something that just like I don't vibe with that much. And I feel like the Deadpool stuff that has like risen to the surface of the culture is the, oh my God, he loves to be pegged. Oh my God, can you believe that nasty thing he said? Ha ha ha. In a very like, you know, I'm a 14-year-old laughing at dirty words type of way. So yeah, I was mixed. I was mixed on my desire to watch this movie, but I did want to see if the MCU could be redeemed, and also if there could be a summer blockbuster, like a live action movie that will do well. And so I was hoping for it regardless. How about you?
Yeah. Well, Stephen, I am a 14-year-old boy who likes to laugh at dirty words. No, I mean, I definitely had fun with the past two Deadpool films. They aren't things that I necessarily would normally be overly excited about, right? Like I'm, as you said, excited for the sort of change of pace, and like every once in a while getting to have like a little something to kind of cleanse my palate in between the rest of the MCU films. But once they released that first teaser that, again, I didn't see in the theater, I only saw online, and I learned that this film was going to do the bridging by utilizing the Time Variance Authority, that's when I was like, holy shit, that is genius. I'm totally on board for this.
This is a thing that means something to you as a Loki viewer and means nothing to me.
Yeah. So it's a thing where like suddenly I went from being like, oh, they're making another one and Wolverine's going to be in it, to being like, oh, they're making another one. And now that they have all the rights that they can kind of shove everything together, this is how they're going to justify it. And it kind of excited me to sit down and watch this film. We're going to talk about whether it did all that stuff in a way that made the eventuality of my feeling match my excitement going in. But at least walking into the theater, I was pretty stoked about what I was about to see and ready to be pleasantly surprised at anything it did throw at me. So yeah, should we get into it, Stephen?
I'm ready.
All right, we're going to take a listen to the final trailer for Deadpool and Wolverine and then come back and give everyone a review.
I know I turn everything into a joke, but I care. I want to use that for something important. I waited a long time for this team up. In my world, you're well regarded. You were an X-Man. Fuck that, you were the X-Man. The Wolverine. He's a hero in my world.
Yeah, well, he ain't shit in mine. Scott used to beg me to wear this suit. So did Storm and Beast. But I couldn't have him thinking I wanted to be there. It was too late.
It's only 9 people, but my entire world is right here in this picture. And I have no idea how to save it alone, but you know how to save them.
Whoever you think I am. You got the wrong guy.
You were always the wrong guy. Till you weren't.
Are you ready?
Fuck yeah, I'm ready. I'm the Wolverine. Stop it.
All right, so that was the trailer for Deadpool and Wolverine. Reading the description from IMDb, Deadpool is offered a place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe by the Time Variance Authority, but instead recruits a variant of Wolverine to save the universe from extinction. Stephen Miller, what did you think of Deadpool and Wolverine?
I think it is going to be very hard to review this outside of spoilers, but I will do my best in this section. I feel like this movie is a oftentimes very funny vehicle for jokes and references and tearing down, almost like you mentioned the phrase palate cleanser before, like it is a palate cleanser for some of the worst of the MCU of the last few years. And it does a really solid job in that capacity. I laughed a good amount in this movie. I had fun a good amount. As a standalone story, this movie doesn't exist at all. Like there is nothing that happens at all in this plot. And I can't decide how much that bothers me or not. Like, I left this movie feeling very mixed because on the one hand, it was really funny in a lot of places. We'll get to it in spoilers. There are a lot of cameos and references and things that they bring back and make fun of, and incredibly meta references about actors or rumored castings that may or may not have ever happened, or movies that were going to happen and then eventually got canceled, and other properties, and the relationships of real human beings, real actors. Like, there's all this stuff where it is not just breaking the fourth wall. It is like bending backwards into itself over and over again to comment on what it's commenting on in a way that is kind of daring and kind of funny to see happen in the MCU, a place that is typically so like manufactured and manicured and has to be perfect and has to serve a story. Like it is kind of funny to see the character of Deadpool just like break it open and make fun of everything. But it also doesn't really feel like a movie to me. And it certainly doesn't. I thought this was going to be a movie where, I guess I did see a teaser because I remember Deadpool making some jokes about what is or isn't allowed under Disney, you know, as the joke of like, hey, I'm a Disney character now, things are going to be different. I assumed this was going to be a movie where at the start we get those references and then Deadpool would enter an actual Disney MCU action movie for 2 hours. Instead, this movie is 2 hours of Deadpool making those comments, basically. Like, it never moves beyond that, which is very funny as a film fan, though granted not as well versed in old Fox movies as maybe I wish I could be to be the perfect, you know, target demographic of this movie. But also, I can't help but feel that, like, I don't know if it was worth bringing Hugh Jackman out of retirement just to make fun of what it means to be Hugh Jackman and leave again. Like, I can't decide how canonical I want this movie to be, or if I even care about the canon of Marvel movies anymore. And it is just such an odd combination to me. It doesn't help for me that almost all of the narrative movement of this movie takes place in the volume, in like the volumiest volume since Quantumania. Like it is the same fucking thing of just being in a place that isn't real, that doesn't have any character, and that doesn't make you feel like people are actually moving in space or accomplishing a goal or anything. There are moments in the movie where Ryan Reynolds / Deadpool calls his shot. Like, he calls out that the audience needs to get their special sock ready because a big battle's going to happen and they're going to cream themselves. And then we get, like, a, to me, almost completely impossible to follow battle with no stakes, you know, where nothing happens. And it just, I don't know. This movie, it is the 8 Mile thing where it criticizes itself so heavily that it's hard to criticize it for anything. I wasn't unsatisfied with this movie. Like, I laughed a good amount. I had fun. I enjoy references. You know, Family Guy is honestly a good reference because there's a lot of, hey, I recognize that thing. That's funny.
Yeah.
You mentioned the thing. Both Family Guy and this movie like talking about the Music Man. You know, there's a lot of similarities. But I just can't decide if all of the recognition and the cleansing nature of watching a movie just like tear down the last phase of the MCU and make fun of things, how much is that worth the effect of the movie feeling like it has no consequence and no stakes and no real goal that it is trying to achieve? And I won't spoil the ending. I'll just say it doesn't feel like anything is actually bridged or accomplished or changed in any way by doing this. Okay, some very minor things, like a couple characters, I guess, that exist, but it's just, it's weird. It's weird that what might be the biggest movie of the summer is also a movie that, like, not a lot actually happens other than references. So help me out. Tell me how you feel. Did the joy of the references and the in-jokes and the people that it brings back and the visions that it lets put to life, did that thrill you and excite you, or does the Chris Brain part of you also feel like, what story did I just watch?
Yeah, so, caveats abound. I am not a Marvel Comics dude. I'm not super steep in the lore. I've only watched basically the stuff in the MCU and the movies and streaming shows. And I was a huge fan of Loki. As I already said at the beginning, I was really stoked that the Time Variance Authority were going to be used to sort of shoehorn Deadpool into the MCU. And that is what I was really excited for. I can't really fully counter what you're saying about feeling like technically not a lot happens. But what I think this film is doing is it's a new origin story for Deadpool, but not an origin story for the character of Deadpool. It's an origin story for how can he suddenly randomly pop up in the MCU moving forward. And, I guess we'll get to it more in spoilers, but this film now allows for him to just show up in any film in all perpetuity, just randomly.
And that's a good thing to you.
It's a good thing to me. It is a good thing to me because it's one of those things where, like, obviously, Deadpool the character has been calling his shot for a long time, right? It's the Hugh Jackman jokes abound throughout the previous films, and it was really about getting us to a point where he can finally team up. And this film is really about him trying to not just be this guy is going after revenge, or this guy who is the fourth wall breaking, dirty talking dude, but actually to have a purpose and a goal and do something, like to be a hero, right? And this film is about him kind of finding his way to potentially getting there. And like one of the reasons why I chose that final trailer is because that trailer is like melodramatic as hell, right?
Yeah.
It treats it as like a very serious.
I kept waiting for the joke.
Yeah. Like it is overly serious, and I think there are aspects of this film that are serious, right? You actually feel sorry for Deadpool in a way, and even though it's always played as a joke, right, you're still kind of rooting for him to be able to be a better person, to sort of be able to actually be the hero, even though the joke is just trying to be the hero so that people can care for him. It's still, you're wanting to see him succeed in his journey. But I think really for me, what I love so much about this film is the way it plays. It's all the meta aspects of everything, right? And I'm not talking about like the deep Easter eggs and crap like that. I mean, just the pure idea of how much these IPs have been bought and sold over the years, and the idea of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and what is canon and what is not. And, Deadpool has always been joking about secondary characters in the other franchises that are allowed to be referenced or shown because they're not like the one key ones. And, the previous films would visit the Professor Xavier's school, and but nobody was ever there, right? Or they were in a room that was shutting, and there was always jokes about like, we can't actually show these characters or reference them by name or do anything like that. But the way this film is saying, like, fuck it, everything you threw away or everything that is now in the garbage is now our sandbox, our literal sandbox at times, to play with and manipulate and bring in and actually show genuine love and affection for what it is about these properties, right? Like the old films that in this genre, arguably, it was a different time. They weren't the best. But this film actually does show some genuine love and care towards those characters. Maybe some of that love and care comes during the credits with a very manipulative song that makes you like...
Which again, even the song though, and we'll talk about it in spoilers, it is all this thing where I can't tell if it's sincere because it can always hide behind the security force field of, oh, I know this is silly and I'm actually making a joke and you're actually lame for thinking I was being serious. It's such a like hard meta thing to wrap my head around.
Yeah, I choose to believe that it's all sincere. And even though these people were all in a bunch of films that like today aren't necessarily regarded as the greatest superhero films of all time, seeing the younger versions of them kind of being excited in the moment for this thing that they thought they were working on, I feel like that nostalgia is real and it's sincere. And I think those people thought they were doing something that was fun at the time, right?
I feel like the movie is having its cake and eating it too, because at any moment in the credit scene, Deadpool could be like, isn't it so lame how we're using this song? Like it just, that's the thing. It feels like the movie has this kind of like invincibility armor, because everything it can do both is and isn't a joke. And that, I don't even know if it's a criticism. It's just a thing that makes it like, I don't even know how to like pierce the armor of, of what this movie's doing.
Well, yeah. I mean, to your point, it's hard to like talk about this film without just spoiling it. But I think that just what this film set out to do, it is sort of like, I'm a little bit in awe of the lengths that went to actually, like, it's not just how do we make this happen? What can we retcon? It's like, no, what if we don't actually retcon anything and we take everything that's established and actually explain how this can all be true without breaking anything, without rewriting any histories, and just go forward with what is already established. Like, it feels like it is playing within the rules that have been set out for it, but it's like cheating by using the rules to its advantage. And I think that for that, I thought it was incredibly fun. Like, I obviously the jokes are fun. The action. I mean, I'm like the one person in the universe that actually really, really liked the Superman Zod fight because it was the first time two like gods were fighting each other, right, and it actually showed what that would look like. And I was like, yeah, this is fucking what a fight between Zod and Superman would look like, and I like this. Maybe there's a fight in this film between two beings beings that can just heal instantly. And I think that as silly and ridiculously choreographed as it was still like, okay, this is fucking rad.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad you felt that. Like, I didn't think the action was bad in this movie. I just never once felt gripped by it either. Partly it's because, as you said, we're talking about invincible beings. It's just hard to, it's hard to feel a lot of stakes for that. But there's also just, I don't know. Well, we'll have to get into it in spoilers. I don't even know what my rating is going to be at the end of this, because like a part of me had the same response you did, where I was like, damn it, you did it. Like there is cleverness in the construction of this movie, like in how many things they managed to bring together. And it almost feels like, and I know production schedules mean this can't be true, but also Deadpool, by virtue of the mask, basically is an ADR machine. And this movie feels like it could have all been ADR'd like 2 weeks ago. So you never know how much is like cleanup later, but it feels like Deadpool is like the Michael Clayton, or he's like the fixer. He's like, they brought him in to be like, all right, last phase of the MCU has not been doing so hot. Can you find a way to kind of make fun of that and bring in these other properties, but also make fun of how much of a cash grab it is that we're trying to bring in these other properties, and also pay homage to them, but point out that there were reasons that they kind of sucked. And like, there's something about it where it's kind of like he is just the wrecking ball that was brought to make way for the new. And I think I'm cool with that. The prospect that the new could include him at any time terrifies me, because I just don't think whatever hero's journey he goes on here puts him in a place where he makes any sense in the real MCU, like in a world with actual MCU characters. He's just like, Paul Rudd is like, I think, as far in the comedy vein as they can go without crossing over into like total ridiculousness.
You don't want Paul Rudd, Tom Holland, and then Ryan Reynolds, the three of them interacting in some combat scene?
I mean, I can see it. If they really find a way to like nudge Deadpool into a serious character, like there's nothing about healing alone that makes him not be able to fit. It's the Reynolds persona and the mouth and all that. I don't know. I have trouble imagining his brand of fourth wall breaking humor working with the MCU, where ostensibly there's a real story they want to tell, and that real story doesn't include, who is Ryan Reynolds married to, and things like that. It's just hard to imagine. Like, I almost like it as a side quest of, let's totally cleanse the palate. Let's make it possible for anything to happen in the future. And by the way, this is actually the final goodbye to Wolverine and Deadpool, which I know is not going to happen because this movie is making way too much money for that to be what happens. But yeah. In terms of having Hugh Jackman join, like I like that it happened. It feels like the culmination of something again, a shot that has been called for a long time. It's like if Matt Damon showed up as Jimmy Kimmel's new band leader, right? It's like there's been like a decade of jokes, and all of a sudden this is just finally going to be a real thing. Did you think the Wolverine backstory and character arc in this movie was emotionally gratifying?
I think it pays off in a way that is, but like encompassing everything, right? Like the way that, I mean, this is going to be a bad comparison, but in the way that a normal scene with a bunch of toys that are alive going into a trash compactor wouldn't mean a thing to me if it weren't for like a series of films that got me there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's you've been on a journey, and like, Deadpool, at least in this film, is this character about trying to live up to actually being a hero of meaning to other people. So to have a character who is, at least a variant of him, is a version of a hero to other people, and like have him not be able to live up to that in a sense, and on top of not being able to live up to that, having one person who brought you into this world who is completely obsessed with you and thinks you are amazing, it's like just rubbing salt in the wound that'll heal in 5 seconds anyways too, right? So to me, it has enough there for me to do the work to get there, to feel like it's paying it off in a way that, like I said, I admit I am carrying everything into it, but I buy into it and I feel like it works for me.
Yeah, we'll get into it in spoilers, but it's another example where I'm torn because it has its cake and eats it too, because it also acknowledges Logan as the perfect send-off. So I kind of like, it's hard to then criticize it for desecrating that, for reasons that we'll get to later. Yeah, man, I don't know. I'm just so... There are certain jokes we'll get to in spoilers that unambiguously I think were inspired and hilarious. So like, there's a lot here to recommend it. And if this were like a Robot Chicken episode, I'd be like, this is a hilarious takedown of all these different superhero concepts, and wow, chef's kiss, amazing how you brought it all together. I don't know in MCU continuity what this does or where it leaves us, or God, I don't know. I'm confused.
Yeah. Well, should we talk about it, Steven?
I think so.
All right, so before we can get into spoilers, we have to give this film a rating and then say goodbye to the non-spoiler peeps. So for now, Stephen Miller, if you were going to give us a must-see, recommend with the caveat, wait for until past the caveat, or a must-avoid, what would you give it?
I mean, usually with the MCU, I kind of round up just because I generally think you like need to see all of them. And this clearly establishes things that are important, if not for the literal story of the MCU, at least the tone shift in the MCU. But man, I'm just so confused and split on it. I'm gonna say rental right now, even though I'm tempted to round it up to recommend with a caveat, because again, it made me laugh. But I don't know. I'm so torn. Maybe when we talk in spoilers, by the end of it, I'm going to be like, wait a minute, edit that. Make it go higher. But right now, I'm rental care. I think I gave this like a 3 out of 5 on Letterboxd without the heart. So I'm kind of like, I'm like in the middle. Like it did its job, but I'm not like in love with it or anything. How about you?
Yeah, so you gave the first film a recommend with the caveat. There's no official spoiler warning rating from you on the second film. Third one, I mean, you obviously like it less than it sounds like the first one.
So I think good. I'm consistent.
So Yeah, that seems pretty good. So I gave the first one a must-see. I don't remember what I would have given the second one, but this one I'm definitely in a must-see as well.
All right.
This is a film that I really, really enjoyed, and in just a moment we're going to get to talk about some of the things that I did really, really enjoy about it. But for now, if you don't want spoilers, we're going to say goodbye to you. So Stephen Miller, if people want to find you throughout the week, where can they do that?
People can find me on Threads at sdavidmiller or sdavidmiller.com.
People can find me at ChristopherInRealLife.com or ChristopherIRL at a number of social platforms. You can find the podcast over at thespoilerwarning.com where you can get a bunch of the back episodes of the show. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so on Overcast, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to know when the episodes go live, you can follow us at twitter.com/spoilerwarning, facebook.com/thespoilerwarning, or instagram.com/thespoilerwarning. If you want to get a hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on our site. Music for this episode will come from a track selected from artlist.io. I believe that track is called Hell Yeah, from the band Ride Free.
Cool.
Yeah, that is playing now. When that music fades out, we're going to be in full-blown spoilers, so unless you want a bullet or a sword or a series of adamantium claws coming at you, you got to be careful and go away so you don't get spoiled. I don't know. I'm gonna go real before I keep rambling on, but we'll be back soon for spoilers. All right, we are back. This is spoiler territory. It's the after part of our review of Deadpool and Wolverine, talking full-blown spoilers. This is the part where I try to, without historical knowledge of lore, explain to Stephen why this movie's actually great.
Mm-hmm. And when you say lore, do you mean we're in spoiler territory, right? So I can just say, like, I assume you've seen some of the Fox movies that are referenced, right? Like, you've obviously seen the X-Men films. Have you seen the Blade films or Elektra?
I am well aware that Elektra exists. Yeah. I did not watch it.
I'm in the same boat there.
Yeah. So, that's fine. I am aware of certain other IPs that never got made, which led to my favorite cameo in this film.
Oh, if you're talking Gambit, then you and I are both in lockstep there.
Yeah. My favorite joke in the entire film is when everybody in that room is going over, like, sort of their backstories and what they're trying to save.
Yeah.
And when Gambit says, maybe I never had my own world, or what, I forget the line, but like, he is referencing the fact that he's from nowhere because he doesn't exist because the movie never got made. And I was like, Jesus Christ, this is the greatest shit I've ever seen.
I mean, I will say all of Channing Tatum as Gambit, I wrote in my notes MVP of the movie. Just the commitment to the terrible, I guess, New Orleans accent.
I don't know what it is.
Accent that he's doing, even with Deadpool constantly underlying, like, who is your dialogue coach, and doing the thing where, like, he points to the joke a little bit too much. I just found it hilarious. I love that, like, because I remember the story that Channing Tatum was going to play Gambit. Like, I remember, and I don't know comic book lore, but I know Gambit is a character that people like he's someone that people were excited to see on screen, and having him then show up here in the void as this kind of, like, incredibly goofy character who no one can understand, and, like, making it makes fun of his powers of, throwing cards in a way that makes it hard to imagine how a Gambit movie would have ever actually worked in reality. He was very funny to me. I was a big fan of that.
I went when they were like, oh no, there's 4 of us, and I was like, oh my god, please be Gambit, please be Gambit, please be Gambit.
I also thought it was going to happen. My second favorite cameo, or we should say joke, it is a cameo though, is when Chris Evans appears.
Yeah.
And the reversal when you realize that he's actually Human Torch.
Yeah.
I thought that was funny because I had completely memory hold that he was in the Fantastic Four movie. And then when he became Human Torch, it was like a light bulb went off in my head. And I found that very funny.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is he's wearing like the Captain America clothes underneath the little cloak that he has, right? So it's like they definitely want you to see that.
Yeah,
but
100%.
yeah, it was amazing.
Yeah, those two were great. Anyway, hip.
Yeah. So let's go all the way back to the beginning. But we were talking off mic, and I also reiterated it in a way at the beginning of this episode that like once I found out that the Time Variance Authority was going to be how we shoehorn Deadpool into the actual true MCU, I was like, oh, chef's kiss. This is brilliant. I love exactly what they're doing here. I think they they have that premise and they go for it, but they also decide to just go even further than that. It's not just like, here it is, this is how we do it, let's call it a day. It's like the entire thing hinges on this Time Variant Authority plot. But on top of that, what they're doing is like, so I was a huge fan of what they did with the last Spider-Man film, right? Where it's like, these are the old Spider-Man films. They don't exist now technically, but we're going to use this whole multi-dimensional thing to actually bridge the gap and bring all the Spiders-Man together and have them like all learn from each other and what they learned from their films and treat them as though they can exist in the same spot, right? And I was like, that was brilliant. I love what they did with that. That was such a great way to do that. Great way to play this nostalgia. It actually had interesting plot things, which to your point, this film isn't going that deep with why it's trying to bridge that gaps. But the fact that this film looks at that film and says, hold my beer, and it just goes like, no, we're not just going to take the hero from these other old films. We are going to just grab all of the characters and sort of play with them, or at least, as many as they can fit budgetarily, I guess.
Yeah, you talking like all the X-Men villains and stuff that are in the movie?
Yeah. Like bringing everybody back to actually play with them, and the heroes from the films that like everybody tries to forget.
Right.
Some where even the characters in this film are trying to forget.
Yeah.
I really love what they did. It's like I almost wish they could have gone farther and brought even more people back to play with it. Like in a bigger way. Who knows who said yes or no? Like I don't know how many people they wanted to bring back versus they did.
Right.
But I love what this film is doing. I also love that not only are they trying to copy that Spider-Man thing, that magic that you had there, but they're also like, there's some other Spider-Man films that everybody really, really loves that deal with this thing called a canon event.
Yep.
And that seems to be the linchpin on which all these stories can thing. And pulling that forward and turning that into a anchor being, what do they call it? Is that what they call it? Anchor being?
Yeah. Very, very Spider-Verse coded, definitely. A lot of the ideas in this movie.
But I love that like they're literally taking the canon event and making it canon in the MCU, even though it technically is in the Sony films, right? So I just love everything that they're doing here and how they're doing that. Now, I know you haven't watched Loki. The thing I said about, at the end of the second film, Deadpool gets the little time travel watch from Cable, and he's able to go back in time and try to become an Avenger. Doesn't work out for him. At the end of this film, he gets the little time pad for that the TVA all use and let them jump around. And that's why I think that this film is theoretically about, hey, Deadpool, you want to be in this other universe and you want to be one of these heroes. But in the end, he decides to save his own universe and then stick to what he had before. So it's like, it's resetting the character to be like, hey, maybe I don't need all that other stuff, but I have this little thing that lets me get back to there at any point in time if I want to. And so it allows him to still continue to exist in the MCU without having to commit to being alongside all the other characters. You talked about not being that excited about him suddenly being just a part of everything moving forward. And that's the thing, is they're not forcing him to now just be there. He just has the ability to drop in and out in a way that allows you to get that little morsel of his presence without needing him to just be the character who's always hanging around. And I really, really love that this film does that. It's like, it goes so far, resets everything to status quo, but also leaves the door open. It's almost like a metaphorical. I'm doing the hand motion for
the Doctor
for
Strange
the little
thing.
portal thing. Yeah. So, like, to me, that is just it's such a brilliant way to explain the possibility without having to commit to the possibility. And allow for any kind of mixing of the, like DC's out there going, all of our films can either exist together or separate. It doesn't matter. It's just going to be a mishmash of all these different things. Sometimes they'll be canon. Sometimes they won't be canon. Sometimes they're disconnected versions of the same character. We can do whatever we want. This film is saying, well, we're going to stick to this, but also reserve the right to pull people in and out as we go. And I think that's
just
fun.
I guess my question is, how is that new? Because like Doctor Strange was already doing that, and they already were establishing with Spider-Man No Way Home that characters could at any moment suddenly burst from one universe to another. So like the idea that suddenly these people could exist in the MCU is already there. Like, it feels like all this did was made Deadpool be able to intentionally versus accidentally do that. And I guess maybe you can help me understand something that makes me feel dumb. The movie opens, or if not, it rewinds after the desecrating of Logan's grave, which I mostly found funny. I like that they literally were doing the thing that people were probably metaphorically criticizing the movie of doing. After that, it rewinds, and Wade Wilson is meeting with Happy, with Jon Favreau, trying to join the Avengers. What universe is that?
I believe that's the actual, like, the MCU.
So how did he get there?
His little time travel thing.
No, but this was like 2018. This was way before the TVA thing happened.
Yeah. So he doesn't have the Yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah. So that's the Avengers version of his world, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, so he was trying to join a different Avengers in his world, but now the TVA is letting him join the MCU. So those Avengers were not the MCU or Anchor B. Like, I know you're not supposed to think about this movie too hard, but like that tripped me up from the jump, because it was like,
so his entire universe was supposed to be pruned because he is in the universe where Logan takes place.
Oh yeah, no. I mean, I understand that.
Yeah.
Like when the TVA plot kicks in, I understand the plot of the movie. But this movie is undergirded by this thing that right after Deadpool 2, he tried to join the Avengers and implied he tried to join the MCU. And Happy rejected him because he said he wasn't ready because he wasn't the hero. And I don't know how the fuck that was supposed to happen.
Yeah, so it wouldn't have been the MCU. It would have been a different version of the Avengers, I guess.
Okay, and none of them are anchor beings in this universe.
No, that universe, Logan was the anchor being.
Yeah. Okay.
They don't explain how many anchor beings you can have. I mean,
so
it
these
sounds
are
like
the Fox Avengers that he tried to join. Whatever. Like, emotionally, I get it. I just think like it already doesn't make sense, because clearly when he's excited to join the MCU, aka the universe that the Avengers are in, it's because he knows them and it's the fulfillment of the dream that he tried to have in 2018.
But see, it's still hilarious though, because like when he's in Happy's office, right? Mm-hmm. He's talking about, is Iron Man going to come down and talk to him? But he can't even say the word Iron Man,
right?
Because he's in the other universe, right? Yeah. So he's just like, is the man going to come down?
Like, I was wondering if there was some canon that was set up that like Happy has been like going around to all these different universes to recruit more heroes or something like that.
Like a different Avengers initiative.
Yeah, but I guess this would have happened. No, it could have been after the snap. I don't know canonically when the snap happened, but I guess Iron Man was still alive at that time. Anyway, I don't know. It just, from the very beginning, it broke my brain, because when it established the TVA as the hack that would get him into the MCU, I was like, but we started with him trying to be in the MCU.
Yeah, he was specifically trying to be an Avenger.
I know, but in the subtext of the movie, those two are the same thing, right? Like,
yeah.
The belief that he might join the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the exact same fulfillment of his desire to be an Avenger, and him being the kind of hero that would be accepted by them. You know, it's like it's clearly meant to be the same thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry for derailing.
No, it's fine. I just, I think I just had so much fun with the way this film tried to wind itself into knots that it was control. It's like the magic trick, right? Where you tie all the knots and the things and you pull it and then it's gone, right? It just was constantly trying to spin itself into something and then being like, oh, but at any time I could just go back and everything's cool. And for me, that was really, really fun.
Yeah, no, I get that. I think, you said you like how the TVA is like an integral piece of all of this. Like, and I guess I didn't really feel that because, like you said, this is that magic trick where it ties into knots and then it pulls at the end and it's a straight line. Because the TVA
that's quite literally what the TVA does is prune branches from an ever expanding version of a timeline.
Right. But what I mean, this movie doesn't prune, right? This movie introduces Matthew McFadden and the TVA as this, look, we're going to destroy your universe, and also here's a way that you're going to get to all the other ones. And then almost immediately they're in the void, and then the void plot has nothing to do with the TVA. The void plot is just this secondary, Cassandra Nova, the Professor Xavier's, long lost twin or daughter, but I think twin. I forget.
Yeah, twin.
It has nothing to do with the TVA at all. In that capacity. And then at the end in fake New York, she crawls out, and then suddenly it's like, oh, this is actually a bigger bad than the TVA. And by the way, we fixed the TVA problem too, the end. And in the end, it's like you are back in the universe you wanted to be in, and all that has changed is Wolverine also lives in this universe. Like, I don't feel like the TVA actually was necessary for anything other than like him getting banished to the void.
I mean... I feel like I'm not equipped enough to argue it from the fully lore perspective, but okay. I feel like I like the twin character is in like it's like a tacit agreement with the TVA to live in the void where she can rule on her own, and it's kind of like whatever the opposite of mutually assured destruction is. It's like hey, we'll govern this, you govern that, and we'll call it a day, and we'll never cross these boundaries. You do your thing, we'll do our thing.
Right. Yeah, it's the MCU and Fox basically.
I mean, yeah, that's how it manifests itself. But it like literally is like don't fuck with us. We won't fuck with you. We'll let you continue to be. Just be in the void, and we'll stay here. So it's like those are intertwined, as far as like it's like things that went in the Disney vault, but in this case it's the Disney void, right?
Yeah, I just feel like the void is, again, I understand literally in the plot what all of this stuff means and why they're connected. I feel like mechanically speaking, the void is indistinguishable to me from Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness going into other worlds where there's the Bizarro Fantastic Four or the Bizarro Avengers or whatever. And it's also mechanically indistinguishable from the quantum realm, where I'm suddenly in this place where the relics of people who have traveled before can be, and the rules don't make sense, and it's this like infinite expanse where I might find anything and then bring it back to my world. Like, to me, they're all the same trick. And it doesn't the TVA, again, if I cared about the lore of the TVA, maybe I would find it very elegant, like that they tied this all together. But the TVA doesn't, to me, doesn't change any of the possibility that already existed. And you mentioned like their job is to prune universes, but a universe does not get pruned here, right? Like they literally save it from being pruned.
Well, it's specifically a rogue element within the TVA, right? It's somebody operating under his own sort of like, I like to watch universes like, get destroyed. So it's like him seeing what Deadpool wants and realizing that he can, instead of having to live for all eternity to watch this like universe eventually die because their anchor being went away, he's like, oh, I see this being of chaos that I can throw in here to help accelerate this so that I can enjoy the satisfaction of watching this vine rot. So it's it's not what the TVA actually does. It's what this group within the TVA is doing.
Sure. All I'm saying is, like, the metaphor feels mixed in the movie because we literally are putting to bed the Fox parallel universe, as far as I know. Maybe not, but as far as I know, we are. Like, we are bringing the X-Men into the MCU. Whether we bring Deadpool into the MCU is unclear, but I assume we are based on how well this did. But in that metaphorical thing of these different universes, they stay distinct at the end of it. So it feels like it didn't actually do the bridging. It just like winked that in the future we could bridge if we want to.
I mean, it built the bridge, right? It just doesn't you don't have to cross it.
Yeah, I guess. Like, to me, it's not that different than, I don't remember if you watched Venom Let There Be Carnage or not.
I did not.
Well, there's a post-credits of that, or maybe the original Venom, but I think Carnage, one of them had post-credit scenes that like hinted at, by the way, this is actually connected to the Spider-Man No Way Home world too, because like all of a sudden the Venom, or one of the bad guys in Venom, runs into Michael Keaton, and they just appear all of a sudden. And there's this kind of there's this crazy event. All universes might combine if we want them to. And I don't know. I don't get that much joy out of it because I feel like they've already done it. And this movie is both putting to bed the idea of the multiverse saga, and then it literally is multiverse saga. And it just feels like a contradiction to me.
And that's why it's great, Steven.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, we should talk about things that we liked about it instead. I don't need to get hammered by it anymore. There are like fourth wall breaking things that made me laugh a good amount too. Like Jennifer Garner as Elektra has a throwaway line when they mention Daredevil where she's like, "Oh, we don't care about him." that I thought was quite funny. I did actually get a chuckle when Deadpool mentioned that, like, if they hurt Wolverine, then he was going to retaliate by like having there be no second act to The Music Man tonight on Broadway. I thought that was kind of funny. I don't know. There are little things that I found funny enough. I don't understand the stakes canon-wise of this movie. I understand the stakes that Deadpool says exist in this movie, but I'm just confused.
Yeah, I guess the stakes are only emotional. They're not real for the world, right? But yeah, I don't know, Steven.
I guess I'm glad you got an emotional arc from Deadpool's sacrifice, I guess, and Wolverine's sacrifice. Because to me, that felt so tacked on at the end. I felt like the movie paid lip service at the beginning to Deadpool wants to be a real hero, and these friends that we don't care about, he wants to see again. And then, I don't know, it felt too small to me.
Here is the problem with that scene. This is why it's fucking stupid. This is the one thing I really hated.
I'm doing the Jack Nicholson nodding meme right now, by the way. Like, yes, yeah. Tell me.
So maybe you know what I'm about to say, but so Deadpool locks out Wolverine, says, "I'm going to be the hero. I'm going to be the sacrifice." All he has to do is connect two things that are theoretically too far away for him to reach. Deadpool has swords. Mm-hmm. He can reach the distance between those two things. All he had to do is stand in the center, pull out both blades, and just stab them, and he would have created the circuit himself. I get the humor and the stakes of these two people, these like people that are in like a buddy cop movie,
right?
where they have this disgruntled maybe affection for each other that's slowly building, and they have to work together to attempt to sacrifice together, but it turns out if two people sacrifice instead of one, it actually makes it half as bad for both of them, and then they can survive it. But I was definitely thinking like, yo, why are you not pulling out your swords and stabbing into the two conduits?
Do we know for sure if the handles are conductive? Maybe.
I mean, he could have stuck his fingers on the edge of the blade right when he stabbed it in.
But then he'd get an owie.
I mean, I feel like they did get an owie. I do love, though, that just Wolverine's just his shirt, not the mask or the pants, just his shirt explodes.
Yeah, I did like the ripped Hugh Jackman jokes throughout this movie. I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
I don't want to veer back into criticism, but I feel like maybe you mentioned buddy cop, and this does definitely play like a buddy cop movie, but it feels almost like it waits too long before Hugh Jackman decides to be a part of the team. You know, like I don't know, like the pacing of it seems like it isn't until right before the epic fight to get back in the portal that he's like, okay, I care, you know, and it's almost like too little too late for me. But I don't know, and maybe you were hinting at this, like I think his relationship with X-23 is moving, and it kind of is the way that he does get an arc and propel the future forward, you know, like I thought that was clever. Him as a character, like we don't get to see enough of what he did wrong, and then I feel like his restoration or whatever, him pivoting into being the good guy is almost like so tacked on that I didn't really feel it.
Yeah. The one thing that is sort of not explained by this film, and the film, like, because the original thing was Anchor being gone, eventually, like in like thousands of years, that universe gets destroyed because the Anchor being's gone. I'm pretty sure we established that, like, you can't just pluck a different Wolverine out and bring him here and have it fix it. Right. So they destroyed the machine that accelerates the destruction of the universe. But in theory, Deadpool's universe still goes away in like 12,000 years or whatever.
Right.
Whatever
I mean, but join the club.
Right?
I can only hope we have that long.
But yeah, because that Wolverine is taken out of his and brought here, but he didn't become an Anchor being. Mm-hmm. He just became a friend of Deadpool's.
Yeah. No, I know. I was thinking about that too. And we don't really get clarity on whether or not that actually happens. And also, again, Wolverine's sacrifice before Deadpool decides to do it instead would have nullified Deadpool's whole plan, you know, of saving his universe by bringing Wolverine here, which maybe is why Deadpool pivots in the end, or maybe Deadpool wants to be a hero. I didn't totally catch it, but for lots of reasons, it isn't totally clear if an Anchor being has been established or not.
Yeah, I don't think so, unless Deadpool is the Anchor being.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, the Anchor was in him all along.
The whatever was the anchor we made along the way.
I think that hopefully they can still hop between universes and just establish the Time Variant Mutant Authority, because this has to be TVMA, because Deadpool's saying all sorts of naughty words.
My brain just broke.
It was a long walk.
Anything else? Good or bad, Steven?
Henry Cavill cameo made me laugh, but it also made me wonder how much money they spent for that joke.
It was pretty great.
It is funny to take a. I mean, I guess by the time they got him, he was probably already a jilted DC person, you know. But there is something extra funny about taking like a DC actor and pulling them in these movies.
Yeah. Cool. All right. I think we did it, Steven. Mm-hmm. We.
I'm afraid you have not convinced me to round up my score. I still feel like it's a wait for it.
That's fine. And it's not even a thing where like I should even try to justify it. It's just one of those things. For, like the entire movie, I was like, "You're doing it, Peter."
Mm-hmm. I guess I should mention I also was not a big fan of Spider-Man: No Way Home, so I do not enjoy this kind of grand combining of storylines the way that you do. For some reason, Across the Spider-Verse works for me well, and I think it's just the animated nature and the kind of high octane thing makes me more happy with the overwhelming thing. And when it's these live action MCU movies, I just have more, I don't know, I have more trouble being excited by it because I immediately think, oh god, now nothing is going to mean anything forever.
Yeah, I guess that is the difference between our reaction to it. One is like, yes, nothing means anything forever.
Like, can you just imagine now when Doctor Doom shows up in the Avengers?
Yeah.
Right. Suddenly Deadpool pops up and goes like, hey, wasn't that actor supposed to be retired after, like, God, the threat.
I thought you died.
The threat that Ryan Reynolds might just pop up at any moment in like Mystery Science Theater, that shit. I don't know if I was gonna deeply care about the MCU in the future either way. Like it's been a while since they've, really hooked me, but
Yeah.
This added element just scares me.
What if so he shows up for like a very split second, right? Just to do something at some key moment and then escapes, right? But then later on we get like a Deadpool 4, right? And it just seems like a standalone Deadpool film. But then during that film, he goes to the part in the Avengers when he showed up.
To it. Yeah.
Yeah. Think about it. Or what? Yeah. What if we fully Back to the Future it and he's been there the entire time, just bopping around?
Yeah. I could respect it. I don't know if it would make me any happier that the joke happened, but it's the thing. I fall for Back to the Future thing. I love Back to the Future 1 and 2, and mostly 3. I don't know.
All right. Well, the good news is, Steven, you never have to think about it again because the episode is done.
Woo!
So, yeah. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Yeah. We'll see you next week for a review of Shyamalan's Trap.
Yeah. Don't forget to wash your socks, everybody.
Stop it.